Okay, guys, here we go. This is it. This is the Otherppl podcast. It's good to be with you. My name is Brad Listi. This is my program. This is my weekly program. And I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm very excited about today's episode because Stephen Graham Jones is here. He's here again. He was here once before, back in 2020, episode 666. And now he's back, celebrating the publication of a new novel called The Buffalo Hunter. It is available from Simon & Schuster. And I gotta say, it might be like the most acclaimed work of horror fiction this year. It's certainly one of them. It's one of the most acclaimed novels, period, of this year. And over the past several years, like going back to 2020, when Stephen Graham Jones appeared on this show, I feel like he has been riding a wave of acclaim and excitement, and he has become one of the foremost writers of horror fiction on planet Earth. And he's here in this episode, and we had a great conversation. I'm excited to share that with you in just a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Simon & Schuster and Mary Sue Rucci Books, publisher of the debut novel Tilt by Emma Pattee. I just talked with Emma Pattee on this program last week. You should listen to that episode. Tilt is the official April pick of the Otherppl book club. That is my book club. You should join my book club. It's a good thing to do. Just go to otherppl.com. You can sign up there. You'll get a new book delivered to your door every 30 days. And I interview authors, book club authors on this program. So you read the book and then you listen to the interview, or you listen to the interview and then you read the book. Or if you're really just wanting to kind of experiment, you could read the book while listening to the interview. It's up to you. So Tilt is about a woman who is 37 weeks pregnant, and she finds herself caught in the aftermath of a massive earthquake in the Pacific Northwest. Portland has been reduced to rubble. This woman is shopping in an IKEA when the earthquake hits, and all hell breaks loose. This is a gripping novel. It's a page-turner. It's funny. It's deeply intelligent and knowing when it comes to relationships and the struggles of contemporary existence in America in particular. So check it out. The novel is called Tilt by Emma Pattee, available from Mary Sue Rucci Books. And the episode, I think it's episode 961. Is that right? Just last week. You can hear my interview with Emma. We had a good time. So I do a weekly newsletter. Did you know that? You can sign up for it over at bradlisti.substack.com, and you will get in your inbox each week an email from me in which I share the news of the latest episodes of this program. I also share a list of links to things that I have been reading and finding interesting. So it is meant to be easy to read, easily digestible, interesting, maybe even a little bit helpful. So go sign up for my newsletter if that sounds good. Also, be sure to check out my new company, which will be launching later this year. It is called Deep Dive. You can find it on the internet at www.deepdive.audio, and you can follow Deep Dive on Blue Sky and Instagram. What is Deep Dive? Well, Deep Dive is a company that makes long-form educational audio, and our debut course, which once again will be available later this year, is called How to Write a Novel. And it features more than 50 hours of never-before-heard conversations with dozens of today's leading writers, including, I should add, Stephen Graham Jones. He's one of the instructors in the course. And I could not be more excited about this, and I can't wait to share it with you. Again, the company is called Deep Dive. Check it out at deepdive.audio. Sign up for the Deep Dive newsletter, and stay tuned. Also, before we begin, another quick plug from one of today's sponsors. Who says we're not allowed to have fun on the internet anymore? I want to introduce you to Zona Motel, a new literary publication, and Brotherhood, established as a countermeasure to the current state of writing, publishing, and existence. Zona Motel has created this brotherhood and web space to envision a literary world where things feel exciting, inspiring, and fun. Say it with me now. Exciting, inspiring, and fun. Zona Motel wants to celebrate weird writers and small presses. Zona Motel wants to help readers and writers find each other and create a new space for the type of book coverage that we so desperately need. Algorithm free, yes. Unfussy, yes. And driven by a love of books, yes. Instead of a math formula used to project sales. Think reviews, essays, literary event dispatches, interviews, and hot gossip, all about independent literature, sent to your inbox. Juliet Escoria, Misha Marin, and Lucy K. Shaw are the founding editors, and they invite you to join the Brotherhood at zonamotel.substack.com. That's ZONA motel.substack.com. Zona Motel. Join the Brotherhood. All right, so my guest, once again, is Stephen Graham Jones. His new novel is called The Buffalo Hunter Hunter, available from Simon & Schuster. And Stephen is the New York Times bestselling author of several books, including The Only Good Indians, My Heart is a Chainsaw, and I Was a Teenage Slasher. He has been the recipient of several literary awards and honors, including the Ray Bradbury Award from the Los Angeles Times, the Bram Stoker Award, and the Shirley Jackson Award. He is a professor of English at the University of Colorado Boulder. And again, this is his second time on the program. His first appearance came in episode 666 in August of 2020. And I am so pleased to have him here once again and to be able to share our conversation with all of you right now. So here we go. This is my conversation with Stephen Graham Jones. Like, how do you conceive of your own prolificness, and do you ever worry about the speed with which you write?
You know, in grad school, I did worry about that. And I was taking a workshop with Janet Burway at Florida State University, and all the other students were taking like 3 or 4 weeks to write a story. And I usually wrote my stories in 45 minutes. And I thought, maybe I'm doing it wrong. And so then I wrote a story in 45 minutes and I made myself rewrite it for 2 weeks. I wanted to do it right. And what happened was I ruined that story. I lost the original ending. I didn't have enough room on my old computer back then to even save different versions. And that kind of taught me not to dwell on things too much. I've had a lot of friends who will place stories in the New Yorker or, really high up places like that. And I'll ask, how long did you write that story for? And they'll say 4 years. And that just blows me away. I cannot imagine doing that. Buffalo Hunter Hunter, I did it in 10 weeks, I think. And then 2 or 3 months later, I think there was like 3 weeks of revision, something like that. But how do I conceive of my own, like how many books I put out, how many stories I put out? I think I don't worry about it. I mean, I do worry about it in the sense that I don't want to flood the market or saturate the market. I guess that's the way you say it. But I don't know. As long as people are reading it and connecting with it, I'm happy. I feel like if I'm not writing, then I'm stealing air from the world. That's what I'm here for, is to put words on a page. And when I have that kind of mindset, it's easy to always be writing, And also, this keyboard is where I hide from the world, from all the ridiculousness going on, and also just cleaning the rain gutters and washing the car and mowing the lawn. I hide from responsibility by writing stories, and why not?
It's your happy place.
It is, yeah.
And this issue of flooding the market, that isn't like, I think about that sometimes when I consider writers who are super prolific, and it's not necessarily a super defined thing. What does that even mean? Is 1 book a year too much? Is 2? Because some writers are putting out 2 and 3 books a year. I mean, there are writers in that vein, I don't know, what is your pace, and where do you, like, what's the sweet spot for you in terms of being prolific, doing the work that you are here to do, but not flooding the market?
Before I got my agent I'm with now in 2014, I think I had 3 or 4 years where I probably did 4 or 5 novels a year, or 4 or 5 books a year anyways. And I loved that. That was so much fun. But the first thing my new agent, BJ Robbins, told me was, we're just doing 1 book a year now. We want your publications to be events, not things people can miss because they'll catch the next one in 2 months or 3 months. But lately with Saga, I've been on 2 books a year for, I don't know, 2 years, maybe 3 years. And I'm happy with that. But it's not just about producing the work. It's also about promotion cycles and all the marketing that follows a book, going on tour and just doing all the stuff that surrounds a book. And that does take a lot of time. If I didn't do all the promotion stuff, I could probably write more, but I like doing the promotion stuff. I like talking to people. I like being on podcasts and going around the world and standing at podiums, all that stuff. It's a good time. So I don't regret any of it. But when I was initially 20, 30 years ago thinking about book publishing, I never took into account promotion. I never took into account all the attendance stuff along with the book.
Do you keep writing when you're on the road? Like, does the promotion stuff stop you from writing, or do you just keep going?
No, I just this morning I turned in a story that I wrote while I was on tour for Buffalo Hunter. I think it goes 9,000 words.
Okay. And when it comes to your career, how many books have you published? Do you even know?
I keep trying to count, but I don't know how to count. Like, does a novella count as a standalone book? I mean, it's published as a standalone. It goes on a shelf by itself. But if you count novellas, and also if you count at least trade editions of comic books, things that got 6 issues in one trade, it's probably 37, somewhere around there.
And what was the breakout book? Is there a point at which you feel like your career made a significant pivot from where you're kind of like on the periphery or obscure to being one of the most prominent horror writers working today?
For me, developmentally, it feels like Mongrels was that book for me. But as far as the world's perception, that would be The Only Good Indians in 2020 when it hit, because it hit in a different way than my other books had. And it had a life of its own. I guess that's what I'm saying. And that's what you want for any book you put out. But after Good Indians, the other stuff I would publish, or I have published, got a different kind of attention.
Can you look at Good Indians and locate what it is about it that caused it to break out?
I think it's a weird book because I wrote it trying to write a novella. So as a result, it's a really weird shaped book. And I think that weird shaped aspect of it, or characteristic, catches people off guard in a good way for the horror audience, and a good way for the literary audience too.
And are there material ways that your life has changed, like your creative life or your professional life, or just your life period has changed since that publication? It
has. Well, it's both that publication and teaming up with Saga. I think to me those are the same moment, the same thing. But yes, things have changed radically. I'm on the road. I was on the road a lot before, but since Good Indians, I'm on the road constantly. And just I'll launch my books at the Strand all the time, and that's something that wasn't happening before.
How is that, launching a book at the Strand?
Oh, it's great. I love being at the Strand. It's so much fun. And I usually have a wonderful conversation partner up there. I think, let's see, Paul Tremblay, Grady Hendrix, Victor Laval. I think those are the last 3. And it's fun,
And in terms of your readership, obviously it's gotten bigger. Mm-hmm. Has it changed in terms of who's showing up at your readings? Do you know what I'm saying? I think writers might have a sense. It's hard to pin it down precisely, but as the readership has grown, have you noticed changes in it, or been able to kind of characterize it to yourself?
Yeah, that's a good. I had not thought of that before. I do think that before Good Indians, my readership, it was it wasn't about size. It was about their own character. It was people who like weird things that other people don't like. It's like people who like garage bands. I felt like that was kind of my readership, and that's how it should have been too, because I was writing really weird garage band type books. But since Good Indians, with Indian Lake and Teenage Slasher and Buffalo Hunter and all and Earth Divers and everything, I feel like the readership has I mean, it's not about size, but it's become more varied. There are people who this is their first horror novel, and I think that's so cool. It's so cool for me to be part of someone's introduction to horror, and maybe it'll be a lifelong thing for them. Maybe it'll be a brief fling. Either way, it's an honor.
So for people listening who are writers and they're thinking to themselves like, wow, like I want what this guy's got. He's got this great career going. He's got books that are selling. He's able to write them and write them relatively quickly. Mm-hmm. And yet, as you describe it, you were writing GarageBand novels, which is to say you weren't like writing with this broad market appeal intent, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And, but then it just happened. But then it happened.
Then it happened. But I mean, of course, the dream is always that you'll catch on, like Stephen King or Danielle Steele or something. But at the same time, I never expected that. I always thought I would always be in the garage. I would always be an indie writer, an indie genre writer, probably, but just an indie writer generally, because I felt like even if I only have 10 readers, I'm still going to keep doing this because this is what I do. It's who I am. I'm just going to keep writing and writing. What I feel like is Boris Karloff, I think his daughter relayed this, that in interviews, he would get asked after Frankenstein, what's it like to be an overnight success? And he said, yeah, after 40 movies, I'm an overnight success, and I mean, I had done a lot of novels before Good Indians. I don't even know how many, maybe 15. I don't know how many books I had done before Good Indians, but then Good Indians caught on, and suddenly I'm, getting more attention. But I was just doing the same work, I was doing the same thing I'd been doing the whole time. And I always knew that I was never going to stop doing it, that I can't stop doing it. And even if the audience goes away, if I publish some book that everybody is not remotely interested in, then I'm going to keep writing. If I go back to 10 people, I'll just keep writing for those 10 people.
How do you conceive of your work in terms of its quality arc? Like I think writers always like to feel like their latest book is their best work, and that they're, you would like to think you're getting better as you go. Like when you look at your body of work to date, and maybe in particular when you look back towards the beginning, are there books that you've published where you're like, wow, like I was really just kind of sorting it out and I've gotten a lot better since then? Or do you feel like there's been a consistency throughout?
I feel like if I give myself a grade, like a 82, for like just everything added up together, I get an 82 out of 100. Then to me, that 82 is like a bar graph. I'm really good in this. I'm not so good in that. I'm okay in this. Like there's three things. And I feel like early in my career, I was really good at like prose rhythm, and I had a different, selection process for which word to use, if that makes any sense. And now I think I was doing maybe I was doing 82 level work when I started out, and I think I'm probably doing 82 level work now, but those bars that make up that score have changed, like my prose rhythm is different now, but also clarity has increased. So I think I'll probably always be the same writer. I am learning and growing. The way I explain it, actually, the way I understand it, maybe that's the way to say it, is that I have a cup, and I pour all my tricks and luck and everything I have to make me a writer into that cup, and it gets up to the brim. And so when I started out my career, it was up to the brim with everything I learned in grad school and also all my early publications, all the books I had read and all the writers I encountered. And as I go through my career, I carry that cup and I read another book, I take a class, I learn a new technique from somebody, and I pour it into my cup, and I'm like, this is great. I have this too. But when I pour it in, something else splashes out because I can only hold so much in that cup, and that's what it feels like to me. It feels like over the past 25, 30 years, that level in the cup has remained constant, but the contents have changed radically. And I think I'm still doing 82 level work, probably, just different.
How's your sleep? Do you sleep?
Yeah, not always, but I will definitely sacrifice sleep for work, though, because I always think work is more important.
So how many hours a night on average?
On average, between 5 and 7, if I'm lucky. For a long time, man, probably from 88 until 2012, 2015, I could get by wonderfully on 5 hours of sleep. And that helped me a lot with work, with writing. And also because I was often working 2 jobs and writing novels as well. But now that I'm 53, my body actually needs more sleep. And so I know that sleep people tell you you can't catch up on sleep one night a week and, burn the candle all night for all the other nights. But that's kind of what I do. I'll stay up until 1 or 2 and then get up at 7. And then maybe on a Friday night or a Saturday night, I'll go ahead and see if I can sleep 8 or 9 hours. And I think, oh, I'm restored. I'm ready for the next week. And I know that's just fooling myself that it's going to catch up with me at some point, but that's the only way I know how to do it.
I want to say the last time we spoke, you were telling me about like an energy drink regimen or a caffeine regimen that was pretty intense.
Yeah. I mean, used to before like I was, I guess, using and abusing caffeine, I was on chocolate, but not chocolate, but fake chocolate, which had sugar in it. That gave me a lot of energy. But yeah, then I got onto energy drinks, and I still love those energy drinks, the yerba mate energy drinks.
That's what I'm into. That's what do you drink the guayaki?
I drink the skinny ones. I think the guayaki are the normal, like beer can size, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I drink the skinny ones that are shaped like a Red Bull, but I love them. I love the pineapple one, pineapple coconut. I think it is. It's like drinking suntan lotion, and I can't get enough of that.
But mate's like mate. I drink mate every day. I think it's like the superior caffeinated beverage. That's my theory.
Me too. Yeah. I mean, I drink a lot of iced tea too, but iced tea doesn't really have that much caffeine in it. I don't think.
And I want to say mate, like the chemical compound in it is not quite caffeine. Isn't it matine?
Really?
I think it's like related and very similar, but not quite the same. I could be wrong, but
I didn't know that. But also, when I'm like traveling, when I'm going overseas or when I'm going to Canada, places I can't get iced tea, just the minimum caffeine I need to be awake or alive, I learned to take caffeine pills. Always carry caffeine pills on me, and I think that can quickly become a problem because you're like, oh, I need to be smart. I better pop a pill. I think that's like an Elvis dynamic that's not going to be good in the long run.
I think if you start freebasing, that's when it's really a problem.
Yeah, I should stay away from the needle and the spoon with the caffeine.
So the Buffalo Hunter,
mm-hmm.
10 weeks, you say?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
That's shocking to me because this is, or by my estimation, not a simple book to write. It has a nested structure. It's historical fiction, multiple POVs, multiple times that you're dealing in, different like dialects. Like there's a lot going on in it. And is that 10 weeks like soup to nuts, including research, or were you kind of prepping for this along the way? And then once you got started, the actual writing only took 10 weeks.
If there was prep, that prep was a graduate seminar I led called Writing the Vampire, which went from, late September until mid-December. And I think I started this book the first week of December. So I spent, 14, 15 weeks living in vampire novels and vampire films and just talking about vampires with smart writers. And we were just trying to figure out why this characteristic and not that characteristic, and why this origin story, not that origin story. And so I had vampires on the mind. And I think that's probably what kind of tipped me over to have to clear my mind by writing this novel. But as for research, I didn't do much direct research. Luckily, I have friends who have all these old documents, and I have a friend who speaks Blackfoot, and Blackfoot, like we are Blackfeet, but the language is called Blackfoot. And so I was able to hit them up, and they helped me tremendously. They just sent me all these old letters, and I read one of my friend's books on it, and that's the research I used. I also reread James Welch's Fool's Crow. That was immensely helpful as well to get Goodstab's diction down. But Goodstab's diction, on the surface, it looks like it's about vocabulary and syntax and limited punctuation and kind of the vestiges of the oral tradition storytelling he grew up in. But for me, Goodstab's storytelling it comes out of his worldview, which is distinctly non-Western, or it's like pre-scientific, because he didn't need to know about, an apple and a feather fall at the same rate of speed in this atmosphere, all that stuff. He didn't need to know about that. And Goodstab has no real distinction between the natural world and the supernatural world. That's just, it's a it just they interpenetrate each other, or it's not about penetrating. It's like it's just one smear, and that was a little tricky to shift gears from Arthur Bocarn, the Lutheran pastor who was educated at Yale in the Victorian era. It could be tricky to shift from his Baroque encrusted language and delivery method to Goodstab's, which was just a 180 pivot from that pastor.
Yeah, so those are the two principal voices in the book. And as you say, Bocarn is a Yale-educated Lutheran pastor, and we are receiving his diary, which was found, and forgive me if I get any details wrong, but it's found behind a wall. It was written in 1912, and it details several massacres, and it details interactions with Goodstab, who is from the Blackfeet tribe. And can you just talk a little bit about his history so that people can kind of get a primer on like who Goodstab is? And
yeah, Goodstab. Well, Goodstab is introduced to Arthur. He introduces himself to Arthur after one of Arthur's Sunday sermons. Arthur Bocarn's congregation files out, and Goodstab is sitting in the back in his little round, late 19th century sunglasses and his Jesuit robe, which who knows where he got that. And he tells Arthur he wants to make his confession, which is tell his life story. And the story he tells is he was born in 1833, the night of the great Leonid's meteor shower, which is documented everywhere, a huge, huge starfall. And this is 1912, and Goodstab looks like he's late 30s. And so Arthur Bocarn immediately thinks he's being lied to, because how can this dude have been born 80 some odd years ago and still look like he's in his 30s? And we learn that Goodstab is recounting his own story. He's also recounting the story of his people, the Blackfeet, all the smallpox epidemics, the various encounters with soldiers, the treaties, and also his encounter with a guy he calls the Catman, who carries himself much like a vampire.
The Catman. It's the stuff of nightmares. And Goodstab is living in Montana around the time of the 1870 Marias Massacre.
Correct.
For people who might not be up on their history, the Marias Massacre was what?
It was January 23rd, 1870, and there was a Blackfeet dude running around, Owl Child, who had killed this kind of well-established cattleman, Malcolm Clark, whom the Blackfeet called Forebears. For a little dispute they were having, he stuck an axe in his forehead, if I remember correctly, and so the military was coming at the Blackfeet for that. They wanted Owl Child, and they thought he was staying the winter with Mountain Chief on the Marias River, and so Colonel Baker, this really, really drunk military dude who had, I think he got a brevet promotion in the Civil War, if I remember correctly. He kind of had some stature, but he was just a sloshy drunk. And he leads the cavalry out to find Mountain Chief's camp to come at the Blackfeet for reprisal, for killing Malcolm Clark. And instead they find Heavy Runner's camp, and they're like, one Indian's as good as another. And so they just lay up on that ridge and fire all morning into this camp, which the soldiers who wrote letters home said the Indians didn't even fight back. It's like they wanted to get killed. And the reason for that is we had smallpox. We were all down with, the Blackfeet were all down with smallpox, and the men who could hunt were out hunting. And so it was women, children, and old men in camp with smallpox. And that's who they shot. And the numbers, depending on what account you're reading, vary wildly, but somewhere between 200 and 300 people, probably.
God. Well, that sort of ties into the next thing I want to talk about, is the interesting way in which your novel, and most of your work, if not all of your work, is kind of like a mashup. It's this work that's steeped in real history and is great at atmosphere and kind of bringing the reader into the times and places of and yet it's a vampire story with your own particular twists on it. So you're kind of blending these two things seamlessly. And I'm not an expert on this genre, but I have to believe that a vampire story that takes place in 19th century Montana, that's not a super populated subgenre, right?
No, it's not at all. You're totally right about that. And, earlier I was saying that for me, I consider Mongrels to be one of my most important, like a hinge novel for me. It was developmentally, it was a hinge novel for me. And the reason Mongrels was because I got to use these horror monsters, characters, conventions that I love, the werewolf, but wrap it up and deliver it with a format, a style that is very weird. Like Mongrels is these long first-person chapters with these flash fiction pieces in third person between them, and there's a lot formally going on with that novel. So what I'm saying is I was able to kind of mash up my genre fascination with my literary impulses, if that makes sense. And I feel like, yes, that's what I've been doing ever since Mongrels. And Buffalo Hunter is to me more of that, because you're right. It is a nested narrative, and it's delivered epistolarily, I guess, if I can make up that word, epistolarily. It's like nested, and then it's as told to autobiography, nested in a epistolary, which is being transcribed into another epistolary wrapper. And yes, vampires are usually different. They're usually Anne Rice vampires, these kind of romantic creatures, people that sometimes have guilt, but whatever the case, they're always super attractive. You always kind of want to be a vampire when you read a vampire novel. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make vampirism a curse. I didn't want to make it a superpower. And so I put a lot of delimiters on it, and I tried to strip away a lot of the kind of story conveniences that the snowball of the vampire has gathered to itself as it's rolled across the centuries. And the ability to charm and fly and turn to mist and all those things, which make a story easier to tell, but I don't think I'm to be trusted with that kind of power. So I have to remove most of it.
So this epistolary nested structure is complex. It's not an easy feat for a writer to pull that off and to keep the reader oriented, and then to do all of this in 10 weeks. Like, did you go in knowing that was the structure? Like, did you have the structure in your head, or is this something you're finding in the work itself?
I found it in the work. Like, I knew the structure was going to be Goodstab or whoever. I didn't even have a name for him. I knew it was going to be this Blackfeet vampire dude telling his story to a priest. I had no idea why he was telling to this priest, and I really didn't even know it was going to be set in 1912. I kind of thought it was going to be in the 50s or 60s. That felt a little more right to me. But as soon as I sat down to write it, Etsy Bocarn took over, and just the same way Jay Daniels took over in Indian Lake trilogy. And Etsy just became not the ramp back to the 19th century necessarily, but she became kind of the contemporary tether or anchor that I think we, the audience or the reader, kind of need to look back in a century and see this Blackfeet and this pastor having this long discussion in a church.
And in terms of the way that you characterize Goodstab on the page, and I guess we should say too that Goodstab is not born a vampire.
Yeah, correct.
Goodstab becomes a vampire because of an interaction that he has with the Catman.
The Catman, yeah.
And their blood gets mixed. I mean, it's the vampire thing. Their blood gets mixed. He becomes a bloodsucker as a result. But there are certain differences, like tweaks, I think, that you've made to the circumstances of his vampirism.
There are.
That I would like to talk about, because what are the two things? I think it's two things that are divergent from conventional vampire lore.
There are, yeah. The first is that once he starts feeding on something, he can't stop until all the blood is gone or that thing dies, because he can't drink dead blood. That is something I took from Anne Rice. And I wanted to do that because I always think it's a little too easy on the vampire. If it can go to the club and secretly feed on 6 people, get a sip from each of them and get a full meal from that and kind of erase their mind so they don't remember it. I think every time the vampire feeds, it needs to be a murder. I think it's letting the vampire off too easy if they can just drink a little and walk away. And Goodstab, because of this, he drinks so fast, so greedily that sometimes he gets too much blood in him and it bursts open his side and it has to leak out. And also, my vampires, or these vampires, after they feed, they have to go lie down somewhere for many, many hours to let the blood find its way to all the right places in their body. That just makes biological, physical sense to me. The other big difference with my vampires is you are what you eat. So if they choose to eat only squirrels, then they'll probably get a bushy tail, you know? But the way that this impacts Goodstab is he, being of his people, or the Blackfeet, wants to protect the Blackfeet. So he tries to only eat trappers and buffalo hunters and soldiers. But what he finds is the more of them he eats, he starts to exhibit their characteristics. He starts to become a white person. And so he's losing his Blackfeet identity, or what he sees as his Blackfeet identity. He's still Blackfeet on the inside, but on the outside, he no longer looks like he belongs. So he, in order to stay Blackfeet, has to feed on his own people. And that, is a great pain for him. Not like a bother, but it like wounds his soul every time he has to do it.
It's part of the curse.
Correct. Yeah.
And so making these changes, like this is the kind of thing that I think some writers might shy away from, because they're like, well, there's established vampire lore and there's rules to this genre. Like the fundamentals of this genre are in place. And so if you're writing into this space, you've got to adhere to them. But not you. You're like, no, I'm going to make this my own. Did you have any reservation about it? And have you gotten any pushback from like the horror nerds out there?
No, I've gotten no pushback. People seem to really be liking it. I don't know if they'll ever use it. People are welcome to use it. It's not mine. I just made it up, but it's in the world now. No pushback. I do think that people who are fascinated with the romantic vampire, the one who, wears capes and tall collars and is all classy, they don't find that vampire in the Buffalo Hunter. And maybe they go somewhere else. Maybe they go, that's what you do. You know what you want. So you go towards that, and that's fine. Of course. I'm not saying I don't need those readers. I always need readers and want readers and want to connect with people. But I also realize that this stripped down vampire may not work for everyone, Well,
I want to read a quote from it. I think it's an interview that you did. This is you speaking. You say, I wanted to really resist the idea that as much as he might try to tell his story such that he's a vigilante for his nation, the Blackfeet Nation, for his tribe, for his people, he's nevertheless still his people's boogeyman. Mm-hmm. It's my job as a horror novelist to always put my characters in the worst bind I can think of.
Yep, it is. So that's if you can put them in that bind, then the story almost tells itself. You don't have to come up with obstacles, because the obstacle is seated deep within the character. That becomes a conflict. Like writers always talk about the second act slog. Like the first 50-60% of a novel, you're basically asking questions, but then on the backside of that, you have to start doing answers. And that transition in the middle is what I call the slog anyways, where you realize you're not moving forward at the pace you were moving forward. And I think the reason for that is you haven't built the conflict right. That's what, like, TV writers, people who talk about seasons of television, they talk about building the conflict such that it sustains 22 episodes or whatever. And I think novels need to do the same thing. They need to have long legs on that conflict, or the conflict needs to be spinning quickly enough that it becomes a dynamo that can drive the whole story, the whole narrative. And the worse bind you can put your character in, the faster that little dynamo spins, the longer legs your story's got.
I think there's a different and probably lesser version of this story that would just be like a pure revenge plot. Mm-hmm. Like I could imagine like a Blackfeet who gets, vampirized. Is that the way? I don't know if that's the word, but becomes a vampire and then goes out and just starts to feed on, the U.S. Army troops and whatever who are murdering his people. And it could be a pure, and there's a place in the world for a pure revenge narrative, but
for sure,
the way that you've drawn it and the kind of the rules that you set up for this world and for this character, it's much more complex and interesting. And I think that impulse is just worth underlining because
thank you very much.
Yeah. It's not like this simple, it's a very morally complicated situation that Goodstab finds himself in.
No, you're totally right. And, that first novel you were talking about, just a pure revenge story, the fun of going out against buffalo hunters if you're a vampire, I think that's what I set out to write. That's the way I envisioned it. But once I got into it, I realized that I really kind of am interested in interrogating what is justice, what is fair? How long does a crime stain a person or a culture or a family line,
Do you have an answer? I'm curious.
No, I wish I did. I feel like novelists. I feel like if we have a job, if we have a function in society, it's to ask questions. But I think once we start providing answers, that kind of breaks the big machine. I think it's dangerous for us to have the actual answer. But if we can ask questions and start conversations, then we can change the world a little bit, I think.
Well, I want to ask you about Catman. I have just like a question as somebody who is not super steeped in vampire lit and might not know all that there is to know about vampires. I was curious about Catman being captive and whether or not that is in defiance of any like existing vampire rules. Like, can you capture a vampire and can you put a vampire in a cage? Like, what is a vampire's strength and escapability? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. We were talking about Goodstab's physical vampire characteristics, and another one of them is that he's not especially strong, but he heals, which that means that he can use his muscles and his joints and leverage and everything in a way that we can't, because we have pain that stops us, but he doesn't necessarily have that same thing going on. So he seems like he's stronger, but he's not actually stronger. He is lighter even, so he may not even be as strong. But Catman is in a cage. The backstory I envisioned but never put on the page for the Catman is he was coming to America on a ship, and people figured out what he was, and they got him cornered in such a way that it was either jump in the water, and who knows what happens to a vampire in the open sea, or submit to this cage. And I think he submitted to the cage because he knows he's immortal. He'll get out eventually.
He's got time. And so, like in vampire lore too, my understanding is like they have to be out at night, right? And then holy water, and then a stab to the heart. Like, does that stuff that
not in my vampires don't work like that, but yeah, that's more or less how it works. And garlic usually has something. But when we first see the Catman, his cage is encrusted with all these little crosses people have fashioned and hung all over because they think that works. But then I see Goodstab take a communion wafer in his hand, and it doesn't sizzle. It doesn't make him smoke it doesn't make his palm smoke. So none of that works. One thing I wanted to do, but it turned out to be too corny to my vampires, or with my vampires, or with Goodstab in particular, was instead of holy water being wildly dangerous to him, I wanted the American flag to be wildly dangerous to him. But I couldn't think of any mechanism that would actually make that happen.
Maybe in the next book.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is it's just cloth and dye, and I mean, I don't think symbols actually have physical impact, I mean, they mean stuff, but I don't think their meaning can make skin sizzle.
Yeah, not yet anyway. So I want to ask you a little bit more about the nested structure and the various characters in this book. I'm again referring to an interview that you did, and I do this every time. I write down stuff, but I forget where it's from. Mm-hmm. But there was a great question in the interview about the way in which Goodstab's story is filtered through two different generations of white people. Mm-hmm. I think that's worth noting because it's intentional, right? It's not something that just happened by accident. Yeah.
I mean, what I'm doing, or what I feel like I'm doing or trying to do, is push back against Black Elk Speaks a little bit. People love that book, Black Elk Speaks, but who knows what Black Elk actually said, because the way that story was recorded, the guy whose name is on the cover, John G. Neihart, he sat in a lodge with Black Elk on the other side of the lodge, which is pretty, conventional, traditional storytelling style for lots of the Plains tribes. And Black Elk spoke Lakota to an interpreter or a translator. I don't know what I guess an interpreter. Yeah. And that person knew Lakota, knew English. And so they would take Black Elk's story, turn it into English, say it across the fire or across the lodge. And not to John G. Neihart, though. well, yes, to John G. Neihart, but John G. Neihart just sat there and kind of asked questions and participated. John G. Neihart had, I think, his son or his daughter sitting there beside him, writing it all down. And then he took those notes or that transcription and turned it into the book, Black Elk Speaks. And I'm sure he edited and changed and made things better and worse, like you do. You can't help doing. But to me, it's always a mystery. What did Black Elk really say? Because it filtered through so many little pinch points to get to that book that it feels like maybe 18% of it survived, made it to the page.
It's like a game of telephone or something.
It is. Exactly.
I recalling I had that book at some point. It might still be somewhere on my shelf, and I'm trying to remember why, but it is a book that filtered into the culture and became, it's kind of like a book of wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how
it's a good book. It's a good book. I mean, John G. Neihart, he did a good book, but whether it's accurate, whether it's really what Black Elk wanted to say, that's what I always want to know.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to know, with all of the success that you've been having, especially since, Indians, like 2020, did you say? 2021? Mm-hmm. Film and television? I feel like your work would be a great fit for adaptation. Is that stuff happening? It's
always in some level of trying to happen. Yeah, Good Indians is trying really hard. It's got all the right people attached and some really cool big names. Chainsaw, My Heart is a Chainsaw is currently trying, and Earth Divers had a showrunner for a while and it was really doing good, but then that all fell apart. So I don't think Earth Divers is in process right now. Oh, Mapping the Interior, I'm really excited for that. Someone I really trust, she does amazing work, is on that. And I suspect that one's going to happen. And just got a script from someone for one of my short stories, Welcome to the Reptile House, which is currently making the rounds. And it's a really good script. If the quality of the script is any indication, it'll probably find purchase somewhere. But it's Hollywood, so quality of the script is not always the most important thing.
Right. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the way that it works for you now, like if you publish a novel, you have a publisher, so you're sort of, your book's going to be in print. You've got an established relationship there, right? Mm-hmm. And then do film rights typically sell pretty quickly? Like, how is it going?
My film agent tells me we'll hear about Buffalo Hunter, or we'll get offers on Buffalo Hunter within a few days. There was a whole lot of interest leading up to publication, but he put everybody off. He said, let's wait for it to land on the market and see what happens. And that's what we're doing right now. And so he's getting a lot of calls about it. We've yet to sign an option with anyone. We've got to hear different people's pitches and see what's up with that. But yeah, lately when I publish stuff, there usually is film interest. And with Hollywood, it's always, I mean, you can't bank on that. Interest doesn't give you a check to deposit necessarily,
Well, or like more often, you might get a check. It might not be a huge check, but you'll get like an option check. But then you're just in development forever until finally it just fades.
Yeah, exactly. That's how so many of them go. Yeah.
Are you interested? I think we might have spoken about this last time, but I forget. Like, are you interested in writing, like adapting your own work, or no?
I don't know about my own work. I love writing screenplays, and I think it's such a alien form for a novelist, and therefore for me, it's really, really fun because it's a huge challenge. It's not just about formatting your story in a different manner. It's about telling the story in a different way, and I love that challenge. I like feature writing more than I like television writing, I think. I mean, I watch both. I watch features and film and like them both equally, probably. But just for whatever my skill set is, I think I'm more fitted to write features. I've been in a couple of writers' rooms, maybe two or three, anyways. And it's
like as a visitor or like as part of the staff.
Usually, I think. Let's see. What was it? I think I was invited to be one of the staff, but it sounded like work, and I don't know if I wanted to go to work like 4 or 5 hours a day. So I was able to negotiate it back to being a consultant. That's it, a consultant. And so I was there sporadically and, read all the product and, give ideas and all that, which to me is great. I mean, you don't get as much money, or your name doesn't go in the same places, but it's less work too. And which less work to me is more time to write.
I was going to say, it lets you do your own thing. Mm-hmm. which is probably the wiser move anyway. You don't want to eat up. I mean, if you're able to put out a book like this in 10 weeks, then, or at least write it in 10 weeks, then you should stick with it.
Yeah.
It's just my advice.
Thank you.
So speaking of, vampires and this rule that you created about how they are what they eat, I mean, not that you created that rule, but you applied it to the vampire world.
Yeah.
I want to know more about somebody like you who is writing in the horror genre from the perspective of consumption. Like, what are you reading on a regular basis? And also, what are you watching? You know, are there TV shows and movies and genres that you gravitate to? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. As far as reading, I bet these days what I read is probably 2/3 horror, I think. And it's generally horror that's on the horizon because I'm reading for blurb consideration more often than not. And that's great. I get to read the hot stuff that's coming down the pike, you know? And what I'm reading right now, this moment, is Theo Van Alst's The L, a Chicago novel about growing up in gangs. And so it's not horror. Theo has written horror, but this is not a horror novel. It's amazing though. It's so good. I can't get my nose out of that book. And I read a whole lot of science too. I just inhale every bit of paleoanthropology I can find. And I love to do that stuff in audiobooks too, because I don't always have time to read a 400-page book on, Neanderthal morphology or whatever, but I can take it in my ears when it makes it to audiobook.
Why paleoanthropology?
I think because I've always been fascinated with digging up stuff. When I was a kid in West Texas, I loved to go way out in the pastures and find where a home was 80 years ago. It'll be flat under the bushes now. And I would spend all day digging in their old trash pile and find these little bottles and setting them up on the fence and trying to imagine the story behind these bottles or behind this little can I found or this wheel that's over here. And I could just do that all day, every day. And so my fascination with paleoanthropology now is just the same thing. I think it's me reading about all the different hominids in Africa 6 million years ago and trying to project back and imagine what was the crossbreeding situation? What was cultural contact like? And like, why did they do this? Why did they do that? And I think I have just enough education in that field to fool myself into thinking I can figure something out. I think if I actually go to an anthropology 101 class, I'm going to be useless. I don't think I know as much as I think I know, but I know just enough to get me in trouble, gives me hope that I think I can figure out what happened to the Neanderthals 30,000 years ago. Why did they disappear? And it's really a novelistic impulse. I want to tell the story of them, like the same way William Golding did in The Inheritors,
So yeah, can we expect like a Neanderthal vampire novel from you at any point?
That'd be really fun, wouldn't it? That'd be scary too. Them dudes were strong. But I did write a big Neanderthal novel, or it was called American Neanderthal. I don't know, 7 years ago. But nobody wanted to buy it, and so it's on a shelf now or in a drawer. Maybe I'll revisit it one day and make it better, make it viable.
The Neanderthal market is just dried up. It's not as hot as it used to be.
Yeah, it could be it, man. But every once in a while, like Adam or like a book will come down about every 10 or 12 years about Neanderthals. Like there's renewed interest and then it goes away. And it's like it can't ever be a sustained interest, but you can have these like comets that flash across the book world sky, What
about heroes? I mean, you talk about reading like 80% horror or whatever it was, but are there writers that you can point to as you were coming up, especially who you really looked to as the people you wanted to emulate?
I never wanted to be a writer, so I wasn't emulating him in that way. I came up reading Louis L'Amour and any Conan the Barbarian novel I could find pretty much. And then I found King in late high school and was onto that. Michael Crichton was really important to me too. In those years, I love science thrillers to no end. And I still read a lot of science thrillers. I think like Greg Bear's Darwin's Children, and he has Darwin's Radio and Vitals. I think those are 3 of the best science thrillers ever. But I love those. But as for heroes, people I wanted to be, once I figured out I was going to be a writer, probably Louise Erdrich. She's she's a big figure in my my world, my pantheon. And Joe Lansdale, he's really big for me too. He's just a model for writers to follow, I think. I was on a panel with him 23 years ago down in Austin, Texas. And in the Q&A period, after we had said our piece about Conan the Barbarian, actually, it was a Conan the Barbarian panel, someone raised their hand and said, "Hey, Joe, what genre do you write in?" Because Joe's done every genre you can even think of, and a lot of other genres under pseudonyms. And without skipping a beat, Joe said, "I write in the Joe R. Lansdale genre next." And I was like, that is what I want. That's what I want to do. I want to write in the Stephen Graham Jones genre. And it's I'm not saying I ever want to stray from horror. I think I'll always be a horror writer, but I also love science thrillers, Westerns. I mean, Buffalo Hunter is kind of a Western. And
I was going to say that's definitely how it read to me.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. And I mean, a fantasy, I want to see what it's like to write elves. I've never written elves in a long form. I think that would be really fun. And space opera. And there's just so many genres that I'm never going to have time to write them all, but I would like to have license to anyways.
And you said a minute ago that you didn't think you were going to be a writer, or you didn't plan to be a writer as a young person. Mm-hmm. When did it shift?
It shifted when I was 19, but the reason I never thought I was going to be a writer, that just wasn't in my realm of possibility, was where I came up in West Texas. You either went to the oil fields or you got on a tractor and farmed. Those are the only two options for guys. And girls generally had to be hairstylists or teachers. That was kind of the two main things girls could be. And it wasn't really that we couldn't imagine other things. It was like those are the only two life paths, you know, there were like rails that we had to go this way or go that way. But then when I was 19, I wrote a story while sitting in the ICU waiting for someone to live or die, and turned it into my Composition 2 classroom in place of a personal essay that I had not written. And this instructor, she should not have read that. And also I'd handwritten it. Everybody else had printers and computers. I didn't have any of that. And so she shouldn't have considered it, but she did. And she liked it enough to pass it on to the creative writing faculty, who liked it enough to type it up and enter it into a departmental contest, which I won. And I got a $50 check. And that just opened my eyes. I'm like, you mean people will buy lies? I had no idea. You know, I was a philosophy major at the time. I was not an English major. And I loved philosophy. I still love philosophy. But so that was a big turning point for me when I was 19.
And then from that point forward, you were just writing. Yeah,
I was just writing and writing. I remember when I came to grad school to my master's program, me and my cohort of like probably 6-7 other people who were just fresh from undergrad, we're like the nematodes in SpongeBob jumping around the professors saying, when can we publish? When can we publish? When can we publish? And they would tell us, they would say, we'll tell you when you're good enough to send something out. And that first or second week of us doing that, I kind of shrugged and thought, I'm just going to see if I'm good enough. What about that? And so I mailed out a story I had, and it got picked up. And I realized I don't need my professor to say I'm good enough. I can win or lose on my own,
And you've been doing that ever since.
Yep.
Have you ever, you don't seem like somebody who's ever like hit like a really dark period where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, or this is too much. You seem like somebody who's just kind of kept his head down and kept working.
I have, yeah. I did have from 2000, I published a novel. I published 2 novels in 2007. And then I had, I think, 2 come out in 2010. But for 2008 and 2009, I had no novels at all come out. And I couldn't have any novels come out. Like nobody wanted to publish them. And I kind of thought at that time, I guess this is it. I did 6 or 7 books, and that's all I get. And that's a pretty good run. But while I was thinking that, I also did not stop writing. For those 2 years, I wrote a lot of novels. And those are a lot of the novels that came out from 2010 to 2014 when I was doing 4 or 5 novels a year.
4 or 5 novels a year.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they pile up if you just keep going.
Yeah. I've never been able to stop, and I don't know, maybe someday I'll figure out how to stop, but no time soon. Yeah.
It seems to be working for you.
Yeah.
And like, I think we talked about this last time I spoke with you, but like in terms of your work routine, that people are going to be curious, like, how's this guy doing this? Like, what does a work day look like for Stephen Graham Jones when you're not on the road? When
I'm not on the road, and also I'm a professor, so I teach 2 days a week. And it's not like classroom contact is not the only hours a professor works, of course. You're working a lot of hours outside the classroom. So there's a lot of hours spent being a professor. But I'd never have had a regular schedule for writing. Sometimes in the summer, I'll fall into a little bit of a pattern where I'll start writing at 9:30 and then break for lunch. But it's usually not like that. And I usually, even if I have the whole day, I won't spend 8 hours writing. I can write for 15, 16 hours, but I'm really only good for about 90 minutes at a time. And after 90 minutes, I need to go do something for 30, 40 minutes and then come back and I have another 90 minutes. And if I write 15 hours in a row, I have to throw away 13 and a half hours of stuff because it's just dribble, But I don't know what the word is, like opportunistic or binge. I don't know what it is, but I just kind of write in surges, I guess.
And you have any storytelling tradition in your family? Like, is anybody else an artist?
Yeah, my son, he's a really good writer. As much as I've tried to tell him, do something responsible, but he's bitten by the bug, so he can't stop it. And one of my uncles is a big liar. He loves to tell long, complicated, shaggy dog stories. And I grew up just worshiping all of his, like living on every syllable that he uttered. And my great grandfather, who was always kind of living in a trailer on the side of the property, he was the same way. My uncle got it from that guy, from the great grandfather. And they can just like color a picture with words, and it really impressed me a lot. Two of my brothers have that too. They can just regale you with their trip to the grocery store to get some hamburger meat, and they make it interesting,
But they don't write it down.
No, they don't write it down. No. Well, one of those brothers is an artist. He is a visual artist and a musician. And my other brother, he's an artist with trucks. He builds trucks that show up in magazines and stuff.
So it sounds like no one in the family ended up on a tractor or in an oil field.
No, we didn't. No, we should have, but we didn't.
I was trying to think. I was thinking, well, if you're in an oil field or if you're in a tractor, that might coalesce with your interest in paleoanthropology. Like, man, you could dig something up.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, working like all the manual labor jobs I worked, I used to be that guy who we'd go to town and you stand on a certain corner by the employment place or something, and you have your work clothes on, and a truck pulls up and they hold their fingers up. We need 4. And the first 4 people in the back of the truck, you go and work for the day. I used to do that a lot. But working with all those guys doing that, they would tell me about other jobs they'd had. And one of the guys said he was on a construction job where they were digging out like parking under what was going to be a tall building. And they found these giant shells, the 600-800-pound, fossilized shells. And the foreman on the job, knew that if he reported that, they would shut down the construction project for months and months. And so he told all the construction guys, y'all come after hours and drag these away with your cars. You can do whatever you want with them. And so everybody came up and they tied chains to those huge snails or whatever and drug them all away.
What, they were snails?
I think, that's the way he explained it. I don't know I didn't ever see him, and, people didn't take photos back then. So I don't know what they were, but he said they were shells, like huge, like coffee table size shells.
Like Jurassic era kind of stuff?
Old kind of stuff, yeah.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
So scariest, or one of the scariest books you've ever read? I'm curious to know. Like, what's a book that scared the shit out of you?
Yeah. Probably The Girl Next Door, Jack Ketchum. That novel really disturbs me. And that's a good question, though. Is disturbing the same as scaring? Probably not. I think The Girl Next Door makes me worried about the people I encounter when I'm riding a bus or walking down the street. But that's a different kind of terror. That's like unease or something. A book that has scared me, it's ridiculous to say, but it's probably a dissertation I read from a student recently. And she was doing a study on theater ghosts. I didn't know this. Evidently, all the theaters in the world have a tradition where there's a ghost. Even if they don't have actual sightings, they tell a ghost story about the ghost that lives there. And so she collected a lot of these stories, and those stories really scared me. I went into it thinking this will be neat. Maybe I'll get something that I can use in a book. But what I really got was less sleep because they made me quite nervous.
Of just like ghosts appearing in old theaters?
Yeah. The one that scared me that I still haven't been able to shake is people, the janitorial staff, the custodial staff working after hours, 2 a.m, 3 a.m at like a 2-story theater. And they keep reporting they see a person walk from one door, like in the lobby upstairs, across to a restroom. And they never come out of that restroom. Whoever walks into that restroom or whatever walks into that restroom never comes out. And that I just got chills even thinking about that. The unexplained ghosts, the kind that terrified me, the kind that show up and say, "Oh, solve my murder," or "read this book," or whatever. They don't worry me at all. But the kind that I cannot explain forever terrify me.
Have you ever seen a ghost?
Not that I know of, but when I come back to my hotel room at 2:30 in the morning and there's somebody just going around the corner, 18 doors down, I don't know if they're real or not. They could be a ghost. I'd have no idea.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. You read these stories.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some of them, it's like a mistaken identity thing, or they think they're seeing a ghost, but they're not. But there's so many stories. It's sort of like, unidentified flying objects or whatever.
I agree. Yeah.
At least a couple of them have to be real.
I know.
Right?
That's kind of what I think. I say I haven't, but I think it was last summer, I do a lot of mountain biking, and I was out on the flats outside Boulder. It's single track mountain biking, like just one rut. And so I'm going one way, kind of going up and down, and I see a cyclist coming towards me. And, when that happens, whoever is going downhill pulls to the side so the person going uphill can keep the trail. And so I was the one going downhill. And so I was getting ready to pull off. I was trying to find a place where I wouldn't have cactus or rocks or anything. And this person was probably 40 yards ahead of me. And they go down into a swell, or they go down into a dip, and they come up top, or they're supposed to come up top, and I pull over, and they never came up top. And I watched the rest of the trail, and they never appeared anywhere. It's like they went below my line of sight and disappeared forever. And they couldn't have gone cross country because there's a lot of junk out there. You don't want to pop a tire on. So I don't know. That concerns me. I don't know what's going on with that.
No, they just went into the underworld. Come on.
Yeah.
Jeez. So, we've gotten scary books and this terrifying dissertation. Do movies ever scare you? Are you able to I guess like in my mind, it's like, well, a guy like Steven is either scared by nothing or scared by everything.
I'm scared by everything. Films do terrify me the same as books do. I think books have more potential to terrify me because you have to allow that book to live in your head for 6 hours, 12 hours, something. And you have to participate in the creation of it in a way as a reader. And so I think they can get their claws deeper into you. But at the same time, film and television has sounds and sight, and that gets past your defenses easier, I feel like. And yeah, so I am scared by films. I think the scariest film to me is Paranormal Activity. That movie really concerns me. The Ring scares me. A lot of like there's even a Magnum PI episode that makes me quite nervous.
By the way, I can't wait for your Magnum PI fan fiction.
Oh, I'd love to do that. Wow, I'd love to do that. I want to do Magnum PI and I want to do Three's Company. I could do both of those, man.
I watched a lot of Three's Company as a kid. We're the same generation. I grew up on that stuff.
Yeah.
It's a great show. And so, you're industrious. You've always got a lot going on. I have to end by asking you what you have in the pipeline.
And on July 15th, I have a novel coming out, Killer on the Road. It's part of what do they call it? A flip book. I had the novel Babysitter Lives come out audio only back 3 years ago, I think. And so they're putting Babysitter Lives in print and they're pairing it with Killer on the Road. But it's one of those books where if you are looking at Killer on the Road, then Babysitter Lives is on the backside and upside down. So you have to flip it. They meet in the middle, their tails touch kind of. And I wrote them in successive months, like I wrote one in June and one in July. So it's kind of neat that they're coming out together. It's a road horror novel set in Wyoming.
Okay. I was going to say Killer on the Road. Sounds like it's a road novel.
Yeah.
And there's something bad's going to happen.
Something bad. Yeah. Something pretty bad keeps happening. Yeah. And it was such a fun novel to write because I got to talk about cars and trucks and interstates and rest stops and gas stations. And that's always my happy place.
And you've got a brother who makes trucks. So if you have any questions, you can just...
I did have a lot of questions, and I dedicated Killer on the Road to that brother.
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, it's always fun talking with you. It's super impressive, the career that you're building, and I'm just in awe of your work ethic and your ability to produce. So kudos to you. Thanks for the time. I really appreciate it.
Man, thank you so much. It's always great talking to you.
Okay, there we go. That was my conversation with Stephen Graham Jones. His latest novel is called The Buffalo Hunter, available from Simon & Schuster. You can find Stephen on the internet at stephengrahamjones.com. Follow him on Blue Sky. One more time, the new novel is called The Buffalo Hunter. It is superb and riveting and a little bit terrifying. Check it out. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to this show. You can also subscribe on YouTube. You can follow me on Instagram and Blue Sky, and you can sign up for my email newsletter over at bradlisti.substack.com. If you're a regular listener, if you really love this show and you get something from it, I hope you will join the Otherppl Patreon community over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Help keep this show going into the future. If you would like to get an Otherppl t-shirt or a sweatshirt, or if you would like to join my book club, you can do that at the show's official website, otherppl.com. If you would like to learn more about my new company, Deep Dive, which is due to launch later this year, the website is www.deepdive.audio. Sign up for the Deep Dive newsletter and follow Deep Dive on Instagram and Blue Sky. If you have 2 minutes and you want to do me a quick favor, please give this show a rating wherever you listen. So on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, rate it, review it. It helps the show in the algorithm. It helps it find new listeners. Okay, so coming up on Thursday, I will be back with my friend and co-host Mira Gonzalez for a new episode of Brad and Mira for the Culture, our weekly pop culture digest. It's a hangout show. It's loose. It's informal. It's unscripted. It's a little bit dangerous. Check it out on Thursdays. Mira is a millennial, and she knows a lot about pop culture, and she watches a ton of reality TV. I am an old Gen Xer, and I don't know much about any of this stuff, and so she teaches me things. We have a conversation about it. Brad and Mira for the Culture, coming up on Thursday. Stay tuned.